Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today, we're plunging into a topic that truly touches us all: stress. We're not just talking about that feeling of being overwhelmed, but what's actually happening inside your brain and body when life throws you a curveball.
It's a powerful, ancient survival mechanism, that's deeply wired. And for this deep dive, we've drawn heavily from The Stress-Proof Brain by Melanie Greenberg. She's a practicing psychologist with expertise in neuroscience, mindfulness, and CBT. Makes her a perfect guide, really.
That's right. Our mission today is to unpack why you get stressed, the different forms it takes, and, well, most importantly, how you can actually retrain your brain for a happier, more resilient life. We're looking at evidence-based tools here, things that can shift your experience from constant overwhelm to feeling genuinely challenged and energized.
Yeah, and what's so empowering about this material is how it blends the why from psychology and neuroscience with practical, actionable strategies. It really drives home that you shouldn't blame yourself for your stress responses. They're primal. But the incredible news is your brain and body possess remarkable self-healing capacities. You absolutely can learn to manage stress effectively.
Okay, let's unpack this intricate dance then.
hmm
Between our brains and modern stressors, understand its evolutionary genius and, well, its modern-day pitfalls. One, the brain's ancient alarm system, understanding your stress response. So let's dive straight in. Why do we even have a stress response? Sometimes it feels so utterly counterproductive in our daily lives.
That's a fantastic question, and it takes us back, way back, thousands of years. The stress response evolved to help our ancestors survive immediate physical threats, think running from a predator or, finding food when scarce. It's an incredibly efficient survival system. At its core, you have your amygdala. It's this almond-shaped structure deep in your brain. Think of it as your brain's rapid response alarm system, constantly scanning sensory input. When it perceives a threat, could be a sudden loud noise, a looming shadow, even an angry face, it immediately sounds the alarm.
Oh, okay.
And this triggers a whole cascade of physiological changes. Your heart rate increases, blood flows to your muscles, your senses sharpen, all preparing you to either fight or flee. That's why stress can make you feel so wired, irritable, or even panicky sometimes.
So that feeling of being on edge or jumpy, maybe before a presentation, that's literally our brains thinking we need to outrun a saber-toothed tiger.
Exactly that. In the short term, stress hormones like cortisol are incredibly useful. They energize you, enhance focus. But here's the crucial disconnect. Our modern threats aren't typically physical. They're often abstract, like an overflowing inbox, right? Or a looming deadline, financial worries. Our amygdala, however, still reacts as if these are physical dangers requiring immediate escape.
Right, doesn't know the difference.
It doesn't. And over time, that constant flood of stress hormones can negatively impact, well, pretty much everything. Your heart, immune system, your weight, even higher brain functions. It can lead to chronic anxiety or that catastrophic thinking pattern.
So it's a brilliant system for a true emergency, but maybe a bit of a blunder for our modern complex lives. How do we get that alarm system to quiet down or at least dial back the intensity a bit?
Okay, that's where your prefrontal cortex steps in. Picture it as the wise CEO of your brain. It processes information more slowly, sure, because it considers context, consequences, options. But crucially, it has the ability to rein in your amygdala. It can assess a situation and say, hold on, that stick isn't a snake. Or this deadline is challenging, yes, but we have resources and a plan. We can handle this.
But what if our CEO is struggling?
Right.
What if it's not getting the right information or is overwhelmed itself?
That's the challenge, absolutely. Sometimes due to past experiences like, say, growing up in chaotic environments or maybe a string of significant disappointments, our prefrontal cortex might struggle to effectively calm the amygdala. We might develop these ingrained negative expectations or a lack of self-confidence that hinders its soothing influence. The powerful insight here, though, is that our brains have remarkable neuroplasticity. That means they can change. By repeatedly practicing new ways of thinking and behaving, you can literally change those neural pathways and the chemical balance in your brain. You can, quite literally, become the more effective CEO of your own brain. 2. Unpacking your stressors. What kind of tiger are you facing?
Okay, so it's clear our ancient brains are still running the show in many ways, but the threats we face today are incredibly varied. So knowing what kind of tiger you're facing seems like the next crucial step, right? What do our sources tell us about the different forms stress takes?
Right. The material breaks stress down into several important categories. First up, we have developmental transitions. These are those significant life changes, like moving away for college, getting married, starting a new career. They're often bittersweet, bringing both immense excitement and a fair share of anxiety.
Yeah, like the examples given of Jan and Wendy starting college. Yan thrived, really found her stride, but Wendy struggled, feeling lost and questioning her entire path. It wasn't about one being inherently better at college, but more about the unique circumstances and the fit of the experience for her.
That's a perfect illustration of how individual these experiences truly are. Then there are major life events. These usually involve some kind of failure, threat, or loss. We're talking about things like losing a job, divorce, a serious illness, or, sadly, the death of a loved one. These cause significant upheaval and can profoundly affect both physical and mental health.
The book provided a really powerful example with Ted, who was panic-stricken about losing his job,
Yeah.
even though he was highly marketable and financially stable. His childhood, being raised by a single mother living paycheck to paycheck, had basically conditioned his amygdala to see any uncertainty as a massive threat.
That's exactly it. His prefrontal cortex, instead of providing calm and logic, actually pulled in these memories of past abandonment and poverty, just intensifying his fear. Similarly, Becky, who experienced childhood neglect, her brain was sort of primed to turn a relationship breakup into chronic stress. It led to obsessive thinking and feeling completely frozen. It really highlights how our past experiences can powerfully shape our reactions to current stressors.
It's astonishing how deeply those early experiences can embed themselves. But what about the everyday stuff? The annoyances, the things that just grind us down day after day?
Ah, yes, those are your chronic stressors and daily hassles. Chronic stressors are ongoing situations, like an unhappy marriage, the relentless demands of caring for an ill family member, or persistent, high-pressure work stress. The famous Whitehall to Secca study, for instance, found that workers in lower job grades often experienced more job stress, mainly due to less control, which significantly impacted their health. And consider loneliness. It's a profound chronic stressor. Our brains actually interpret it as a threat, impacting health right down to the genetic level, influencing things like inflammation and even how our cells age.
Wow. And daily hassles, like frustrating traffic or a jammed printer. They seem minor, but they add up fast, don't they?
They absolutely do. The material notes that when daily hassles accumulate, you simply don't have time to recover. Your system doesn't get a break. Our brains are wired for acute stress, followed by recovery, not this constant barrage. It's like being stuck behind slow drivers and letting that turn into a mental stress highway, where every minor bump feels like a major collision. We've all had those mornings where one tiny thing goes wrong and suddenly you feel like the whole day is just unraveling. It really shows how these small things pile up.
Definitely had those days.
And finally, we confront adverse childhood events, ACEs, and trauma. These events, which can range from abuse and neglect to witnessing violence or experiencing natural disasters, can literally disrupt your brain's chemical response to stress for decades. Your amygdala becomes oversensitive, hypersensitive really, triggering responses that are often way out of proportion to current situations. It makes even minor events feel completely overwhelming.
So what does this deep dive into different stressors mean for us, for you listening?
It means that understanding the type of stressor you're facing and maybe recognizing how your unique past might be influencing your present response. That's the absolutely critical first step. It's the foundation for effective management. As the source powerfully states, how you view your stress matters. 3. Calming the alarm bells. The power of mindfulness and emotional regulation.
Okay, so with all these different stressors constantly triggering our amygdala's alarm bells, how do we begin to calm it down? The sources point to mindfulness as a particularly key strategy here.
Indeed. Mindfulness is presented almost as the antidote to being swept away or immobilized by stress. The Buddha famously said something like, pain is inevitable, suffering is not. The first arrow is the unavoidable pain of life, right? But the second arrow is our reaction to that pain, our aversion, our worry, our desperate attempts to push feelings away. Mindfulness helps us avoid that second arrow.
So at its core, it's about accepting what's happening in the moment, but without layering on judgment.
Precisely. John Kabat-Zinn, who really helped bring mindfulness into Western medicine, defined it as paying attention purposefully and with non-judgmental acceptance to your present moment experience. This practice creates a healthy distance, a sort of space, between you and stressful thoughts and feelings. It effectively gives your prefrontal cortex the breathing room it needs to engage and formulate a more thoughtful, mindful response.
A bit of space, I like that.
And this is where it gets truly transformative. Regular mindfulness practice can actually lead to physical changes, like A shrinkage in the size of your amygdala and an increase in the connectivity between your prefrontal cortex and amygdala. This makes your brain measurably less reactive to negative events over time. It's quite amazing.
It's truly incredible to think our brains can adapt like that. For listeners eager to try, what are the absolute first, most accessible steps suggested by the sources for someone just starting out with mindfulness?
Well, it involves developing a few core characteristics, or maybe attitudes. First, cultivating an observing stance. Imagine you're watching your feelings and thoughts like clouds passing by without getting completely consumed by them. Then, consciously slowing things down. This gives your prefrontal cortex time to actually process what's happening. And focusing on the present moment helps interrupt that cycle of rumination about the past or worrying about the future. It also encourages replacing fear with curiosity about what you're feeling and embracing openness and non-judgment. It's less about actively doing something and more about simply being in the moment.
Can you give us a concrete, really simple example from the sources that anyone could try, maybe right now?
Certainly. One powerful and very basic technique is the simple breath awareness meditation. You just sit comfortably, simply noticing your breath as it flows in and out without trying to change it at all. When your mind inevitably wanders, and it will, that's normal, you gently, kindly bring your attention back to your breath. Another really accessible practice is mindfulness of your senses in nature, intentionally engaging with sights, sounds, smells, textures around you in a natural environment. Heck, even just looking at nature pictures has shown cardiovascular recovery benefits. Or if you're stuck indoors, creating a little mindfulness corner with interesting objects to focus on can serve a similar purpose.
That makes it feel very accessible, not like you need to dedicate hours or be some kind of guru. How can we integrate this into a busy daily life?
The sources suggest practical things, like the STOP technique. Stop what you're doing for a moment. Take a conscious breath, observe your thoughts and feelings without judgment, and then proceed mindfully with whatever you were doing. You can use it when you first wake up, maybe before checking your phone, or whenever you feel that stress starting to creep in. It's a quick redirect, brings your brain back to the present, and effectively weakens your amygdala's hold over time.
So it's about recognizing the feelings, the thoughts, but actively choosing not to let them take over the pilot seat, making a conscious choice.
Exactly. It means allowing rather than pushing away your inner experience, just letting it be there. 4, taking back control, mastering your emotions and mindset.
Okay, so we're learning to calm the amygdala, observe our thoughts, but what about those really overwhelming emotions that come with stress? Is it always best just to feel them and do nothing else?
Well, while mindfulness encourages acceptance, actively suppressing emotions is actually quite unhelpful. It tends to backfire. The sources show that shoving emotions down doesn't make them vanish. In fact, they often resurface later, sometimes with greater intensity, and it depletes your self-control resources. Emotions are hardwired signals. They'll keep sounding the alarm until you truly listen to what they're trying to tell you.
Okay, so if we can't suppress them and we don't want to be overwhelmed by them, what can we do? What's the middle ground?
We can start with grounding strategies. These are techniques to quickly regain a sense of safety and presence when you feel swept away. They redirect your attention to your physical senses or your imagination. Think of imagining a golden cord growing from your spine, anchoring you firmly to the earth. Or just walking slowly, really feeling the ground beneath your feet. Even something simple like describing 3 objects in the room by their sensory qualities, color, texture, sound, can pull you back to the immediate present quite effectively.
Simple, practical things.
Exactly. Then it really is about learning to allow and accept stressful emotions. Jon Kabat-Zinn famously described it like surfing a wave, remember? You can't stop the waves from coming, but you can absolutely learn to surf them. Practices like softening emotions in your body involve visualizing an emotion and gently trying to soften its edges, maybe lighten its weight, just allowing it to be there without fighting it. Or you can use nature imagery to externalize the emotion, imagining your mind as a vast pond or an ocean or the sky, and your emotions are just elements within it, churning water, passing waves, clouds floating by. This gives you perspective, a sense of space.
Those sound like really powerful ways to reframe our relationship with intense feelings. What about actively expressing these feelings in a healthy way?
Absolutely critical. Expressive writing, pioneered by James Pennebaker, is an incredibly effective tool for this. It involves writing down your deepest thoughts and emotions about an unresolved stressful event, maybe for 20-30 minutes. The key is aiming to create a narrative, a story with a beginning, middle, and end. Studies consistently show this practice can help people cope with all sorts of things: job loss, relationship breakups, even chronic health issues like asthma or cancer. It leads to improved mental and physical health because it helps you process and integrate the experience.
That's a practical, accessible tool anyone can try. Now, beyond managing emotions, the sources talk a lot about the crucial importance of control, feeling in control.
Yes, gaining control over your stress, or at least the perception of control, is fundamentally crucial. Humans have this profound preference for controllable conditions. Unpredictability and a perceived lack of control are potent triggers for our amygdala. Research, like those classic learned helplessness studies with dogs, starkly illustrates that uncontrollable stress is far more toxic. It can lead to depression-like states.
So even if the stressor itself might be outside our direct control, like, say, the economy, perceiving some area of control can make a huge difference.
Precisely. That classic study in nursing homes provides such a beautiful illustration. Residents given more control over their daily lives, simple things like choosing their activities, caring for a plant, showed better health outcomes and significantly lower mortality rates. It's not just about what you objectively can control, but what you perceive you can control, and crucially, how you act on that perception.
Taking action on what you can control.
Exactly. And this also ties into building stress resilience. The idea that overcoming some level of adversity can actually make us stronger. It's sometimes called an inoculation effect. Emmy Werner's longitudinal study on resilient children highlighted key protective factors, like having at least one caring, supportive adult and developing a sense of pride in a particular skill or accomplishment. Those things build that inner sense of capability.
So how do we practically figure out what's within our sphere of influence when we're feeling completely overwhelmed? It can be hard to see clearly then.
It can. The sources recommend a very strategic approach. Clearly identify what you can control. Things like your effort, your preparation, your communication style, asking for help. Then contrast that with what you cannot control: other people's actions, external circumstances, the past. And for the things you can't control, there's a powerful practice called putting things you can't control into a container. You literally visualize those worries, those uncontrollable factors, flowing into a container. You seal it, you store it away, maybe on a high shelf in your mind. This allows you to refocus your mental energy on what is within your power.
That's a truly effective visual, a mental container for letting go of what we genuinely can't change. I like that a lot. 5. Rewiring your brain. Mindset and healthy habits for long-term resilience. That visual of letting go is so powerful because it reinforces the idea that we can exert influence over our internal experience, right? And it's that very influence, that sense of agency, that our sources say is a fundamental building block for long-term resilience. Beyond these immediate techniques, our overall mindset and our daily habits profoundly impact our stress levels and how resilient we become over time.
This is truly where your prefrontal cortex takes the lead, in actively rewiring your brain for the better. Let's start with cognitive flexibility. Stress often narrows our perspective, makes us rigid, makes us cling to old, sometimes unhelpful habits or ways of thinking. But flexibility means being able to consider conflicting information, pivot your perspective when needed, and adjust your responses to challenges effectively.
Like the examples given of Betty, who was stuck trying to please a critical husband, or Peggy, who felt overwhelmed and avoidant in a demanding job. They both learned to see their situations differently, which was the crucial first step, the key, really, to finding new, effective coping strategies.
Exactly. They shifted from what the book calls mental cement or mental sand to mental clay, moldable and adaptable. It's interesting. Stress can even reduce cognitive flexibility in infants, making them stick to old, unhelpful patterns. The learning cognitive flexibility practice actually asks you to actively consider different perspectives on a stressful situation. Try seeing it as a challenge rather than just a threat, maybe. Or how would an objective, wise observer view it? This deliberately broadens your mental landscape.
Okay, broadening the view. Now, we've all experienced getting stuck in those cycles of worry and rumination, where thoughts just replay endlessly. They just loop. How do we break those loops?
Yes. Those are persistent, repetitive thoughts that don't lead to solutions. They just amplify stress, often creating this vicious feedback loop between your amygdala and prefrontal cortex. Strategies include direct interventions like thought stopping. Some people literally snap an elastic band on their wrist and mentally shout, "Stop!" It sounds simple, but it can interrupt the pattern. You can also create a worry corner, or a worry chair, designating a specific time and place to do your worrying, containing it, rather than letting it bleed into your whole day. Or for a bit of cognitive judo, use alternative funny images. Picturing something absurd like a bright pink elephant on roller skates whenever the worry pops up can effectively redirect those persistent thoughts because it's just so different.
I love that pink elephant idea. It adds a bit of lightness. And what about when our minds jump straight to the absolute worst case scenario? Everything's going to be a disaster.
Ah, that's decatastrophizing. It involves using your logical prefrontal cortex strategies to really assess the actual probability and likely impact of your fears. Ask yourself specific questions. What specifically am I afraid will happen? Is this a definite outcome or just a thought I'm having? What's the solid evidence for and against it actually happening? And honestly, how bad would it really be if it did happen? And could I survive it? Mm. This helps you distinguish between thoughts and facts, grounding you back in reality. Often we get caught in these common thinking traps, patterns like black and white thinking, emotional reasoning, or tunnel vision. For example, black and white thinking makes you feel like if something isn't perfect, it's a complete catastrophe. It closes off all the nuanced solutions in between. Diagnosing these traps in yourself and actively challenging them with specific questions helps find more balanced perspectives.
Finding that balance. So once we're maybe a bit more flexible and less trapped by these negative thoughts, how do we actively bring in more positive states and really start to change our default settings?
Well, perhaps the most impactful mindset shift, according to the sources, is deliberately adopting a stress is beneficial mindset. Now, this isn't just, wishful thinking or putting on a brave face. Research shows tangible effects. For instance, mothers caring for children with disabilities who genuinely viewed their demanding role as meaningful rather than just a burden were actually protected from some of the negative cellular aging effects associated with chronic stress. Another study, this one at a financial institution, showed that managers who watched a short video framing stress as potentially beneficial actually had better mental health outcomes and improved work performance compared to a control group.
That's truly remarkable. So our perception, how we frame it, literally changes the physical outcome.
Yes, because it changes how we respond to the stressor physiologically and behaviorally. Viewing stress as beneficial encourages engagement, curiosity, active coping, rather than shutting down or avoidance. It shifts your body from a threat response to more of a challenge response, which is much healthier. And this is crucial for resilience. It can even lead to post-traumatic growth, where mastering challenges doesn't just bring you back to baseline, it actually makes you stronger, shifts your worldview positively, and fosters significant personal growth.
This reminds me a lot of the concept of grit. Is that related?
Exactly. Becoming gritty is another powerful mindset highlighted. It involves three key things: commitment, having a deep passion for what you do, viewing stressors fundamentally as a challenge rather than just a threat, and consistently focusing on what you can control. Angela Duckworth's research, which is quite famous now, shows grit often predicts success in various fields better than IQ. It's about determination, perseverance through discomfort, and critically, seeing failure not as an endpoint, but as a valuable learning opportunity on the path to long-term goals.
Okay, mindset is key. Finally, let's just quickly touch on how we can live healthier lives day to day to physically support a stress-proof brain, the foundations.
Absolutely. Two critical areas, and they're deeply interconnected with stress: sleep and exercise. Chronic stress significantly disrupts sleep patterns. I think the statistic was nearly half of Americans report lying awake due to stress. Stress hyperarouses the nervous system, basically making it incredibly hard to switch off at night. Simple things help, though. Limiting caffeine and alcohol, especially later in the day, establishing a consistent, relaxing bedtime routine, and practicing progressive muscle relaxation. A technique where you systematically tense and then release different muscle groups can be really effective at resetting your nervous system for sleep.
And then the power of movement, exercise.
Oh, absolutely. Regular aerobic exercise is a profound stress reducer. It lowers stress hormones like cortisol, it boosts feel-good neurotransmitters like endorphins, and research suggests it can even protect your cells from some stress-related aging. Both intense workouts and more mindful practices like yoga and Pilates offer significant benefits. The key is finding something you enjoy. To build an exercise habit, the advice is practical. Find cues, tap into intrinsic motivators, what feels good, choose enjoyable activities, and proactively anticipate barriers, what might get in the way. When you prioritize sleep and movement, you're not just doing things for your body, you're actively rewiring your brain for greater resilience. It's all connected. Outro.
Wow, what an illuminating deep dive that was into the stress-proof brain. We've journeyed from understanding stress as this ancient, deeply wired evolutionary response
Hmm.
to recognizing its really diverse modern forms.
And we've seen that while we can't always control the stressors we face, life happens, right? We possess an incredible capacity to control our response to them. From understanding our amygdala's sometimes overactive alarm system and how past experiences shape us, to actively employing things like mindfulness, emotional regulation, strategic thinking, we truly can become the CEO of our own brains.
Yeah, it's about embracing that cognitive flexibility we talked about, letting go of unhelpful thought patterns by, say, decatastrophizing and cultivating those powerful mindsets like stress is beneficial and grit. Plus, crucially, reinforcing all of this with those foundational healthy habits like prioritizing sleep and getting regular exercise.
Exactly. And remember, these aren't quick fixes, are they? They're skills. Skills you learn through consistent, repeated practice. You're literally building new, healthier pathways in your brain over time. And this path, this effort, can lead to greater health, more happiness, stronger relationships, and ultimately more success across all areas of your life.
So here's a provocative thought for you to carry forward from today. What single small habit, inspired by today's deep dive, maybe just one thing, can you start implementing today to begin rewiring your brain for greater resilience?
Just choose one practice, maybe one tiny shift in mindset or behavior that resonated with you, and just observe. See how that small change begins to transform your entire experience of stress. It can be quite profound.
We really hope this deep dive has given you powerful insights and practical tools to navigate your world with, hopefully, a bit more calm and confidence. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to our next deep dive.